In this walkthrough, I want to take you through a couple other elements that come into play when you are digitizing polygons in general, but in particular houses or other structures where you are using aerial imagery to determine the shape of the feature. First thing for you to be aware of is that when you are using aerial imagery, that you're taking images from a plane, in this case sometimes drones or satellites and so forth, that are flying above the ground, and in some cases the structures are directly below the plane, but in other cases the structures are off to the right or the left, and so they appear to be at a slight angle, and you can see like the side of the structure instead of directly overhead. And you can sort of see that in the houses here. On the west side of the houses, you're seeing a little bit of the west edge of the house, so the wall that's there. So you have to be mindful of that. Another thing that you need to be mindful of, and I'm not going to have you deal with it in this class, but if you're digitizing structures beyond this class, you need to be aware of the fact that oftentimes when we have polygons that represent structures, those are actually what we call the footprints of the structure, which is the outline, the perimeter of the structure where it meets the ground. And sometimes the structures are different at the footprint than they are in other places in the building. So in commercial buildings, this happens quite a bit. Even in houses, this happens, and the way it's most commonly seen is through eaves, where we have the roof actually extending maybe 18 inches or 2 feet from the wall as an overhang. So the roof is actually slightly larger than the footprint. And when you have an aerial image like we have here, you cannot see the footprint. You can only see the roof. What we will do in our exercises is I'll just have you digitize the roof and have that be a stand-in for the footprint. But if you were doing this for real, you might need to adjust the size of that polygon to account for the fact that the footprint is slightly smaller. Another thing I want to show you before I start digitizing is that we have a house right here, and it's got this little indentation where the driveway and you have the sidewalk that goes in the house. Same thing with this. So we have a house that isn't nice and square or rectangular with maybe one protrusion. We have multiple angles going on here. And one of the issues that you can have, if you look over here, we have a solid yellow color for our houses. And if I just quickly did a rectangle and to show you something, and I'll delete this, you'll see what the problem is when I start digitizing. And that is that polygon, while it has some transparency to it, it's difficult to see through it in many places. And this structure isn't so bad, and the transparency isn't difficult to manage the fact that, or to see the fact that, and I will go ahead and delete this, that there's this little indentation here. But with shadows, with trees and other kinds of things in the photo itself, it may be really difficult to see that. So what you might want to do is, when you are digitizing structures like this, is to go ahead and turn off the fill color and make it no color, and choose a nice bright color, which is going to be off your screen here. I'm choosing a yellow here, and then I'll click apply. So what happens now when I'm back to creating my features, and I'll go ahead and do the rectangle again just to make it quick, is you can see that we now have this polygon, and we could completely see the entity as we're drawing around it. So there's that. Another thing for you to be aware of is that, and it goes back to the angle of the photograph relative to the plane that was flying, is that when you have houses that are what we call off nadir, or off to the edge of the image, that they tend to look like they're leaning a bit. And when that happens, when you have houses with pitched roofs, the point of the pitch, because it's taller than the base of the pitch, which is over here, it can actually look like it's extending out away from the house. And it's just nothing more than the angle of the photograph the house actually isn't doing that. And you can always confirm by going to Street View to see that. So this wall right here on the east side of the house goes from that corner to this corner. It's actually a straight line. And if you were to look at this house from the side, you would see that. So it doesn't come out and then back in. Same thing with the west side, where it doesn't come in and then go back out. So this is one wall. So you have to be mindful of the pitch of the house, creating some visual optical illusions for you that don't exist in reality. So it's always a good idea to confirm with other imagery like photographs that you've taken or Street View or whatever, to make sure that if you're doing something for reality, it's actually the way it should be. So let's digitize these two houses. The other thing as we get going, and I'm going to use the polygon tool here, is that when you are digitizing structures for me in this class, I want you to ignore things like decks or pools. You will include anything with a roof. So these sheds in the back will get drawn, but the pools and the decks do not. So I'm going to start my polygon, and again, I'll switch to the right angle line tool. And I'll go over to this corner right here, and then I'll come down to this corner. Now I'm going to go straight across to that corner, up, over, back down, and then remember, you can right click and do square and finish, which is off your screen, or the F3 key to finish your polygon. If you don't do the square and finish, you can do the F2 key, which I'll show you in different walkthroughs. And so there's our structure here, and so the same process will work for this structure. So I'll go from that corner of the roof that I can see, and then, you know, it looks like there's a jog right here, but I'm just going to make it straight across, and then up and over and down. And the nice thing about the right angle tool is it keeps my corners square, and oops, there we go. And then I will square and finish. And if we turn off the image, and a couple things happen. One is that you can see the last feature I drew is automatically selected. And so you don't want to have that when you're exporting your map. So you want to make sure you clear the selection. To make this a little easier to see, I'll go ahead and I'm just going to choose maybe a light orange color or something here with a darker outline so you can see the structures. So when you are doing your map for export, you're not going to have the image underneath. So you want to make sure that your structures have nice right angles to them. If you do not, what can happen is, and I'm just going to fake doing a structure over here, is that when you try to eyeball, and I'll double click to end, you know, you get these really strange corners here that in reality are 90-degree corners, but in your image they are not, or in your map they are not. So the right angle tool, and I delete that, is one that really facilitates creating right angles on the corners of your houses, and then that square and finish tool allows you to have that final corner being right angle. So be mindful of angle, be mindful of pitch, be mindful of your fill when you are digitizing.